Greetings and welcome back to Mythic Memoirs, where we bring you the most fascinating and bone-chilling true crime stories from around the world. As always, we've scoured the archives to bring you a tale that will leave you on the edge of your seat, so sit back, relax, and get ready to be transported into the dark and twisted world of true crime. The D.C. snipers case was a terrifying crime spree that gripped the Washington, D.C. area in 2002. Over a period of 3 weeks, 10 people were killed and 3 others were injured by the snipers, who seemed to strike at random from the back of a modified Chevy Caprice. The case left the city on edge and sparked a massive manhunt for the perpetrators. In the following chapters, we will explore the investigation into the D.C. snipers case and the journey that law enforcement took to bring the snipers to justice. From the initial shootings to the arrest and trial of the suspects, we will delve into the complexities of the investigation and the human psyche. And we will see how, through a combination of forensic evidence, eyewitness accounts, and meticulous detective work, the snipers were eventually caught and brought to justice. Join us as we explore one of the most chilling and high-profile crimes in recent history, and see how the city of Washington, D.C. came together to overcome the fear and uncertainty that the snipers left in their wake. In October 2002, residents of the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area began to live in fear. A string of seemingly random shootings was taking place, leaving people terrified to go about their daily lives. The shootings began on October 2nd, when 55-year-old James Martin was killed in a parking lot in Montgomery, Alabama. Over the next 3 weeks, there would be 14 more shootings, resulting in 10 deaths and 3 injuries. The shootings occurred at gas stations, parking lots, and even outside of schools. As the shooting spree continued, law enforcement agencies from across the region began to work together to try to solve the case. The FBI, ATF, and local police departments all worked together to try to find the perpetrator or perpetrators. And as the investigation progressed, a pattern began to emerge. The shootings were all committed using a high-powered rifle fired from a distance. The community was on edge, and the media coverage of the shootings only added to the panic. Parents were afraid to send their children to school, and people were hesitant to go out in public. It seemed that no one was safe from the D.C. snipers. In the following chapters, we will delve into the investigation into the D.C. snipers and the hunt to bring them to justice. From the search for the suspects to the trial that followed, we will explore the complexities of the case and the impact it had on the community. And we will see how, through the tireless work of law enforcement officials and the bravery of everyday citizens, the D.C. snipers were eventually brought to justice. The first shooting occurred on October 2, 2002, at a shopping center in Wheaton, Maryland. Within days, 5 more people had been killed and several others injured. Panic and fear gripped the Washington, D.C. area as people wondered who could be responsible for these senseless and seemingly random attacks. Law enforcement officials quickly launched a massive investigation, forming a task force that included federal, state, and local authorities. They worked around the clock to gather evidence, interview witnesses, and track down leads. At first, the investigation seemed to be going nowhere. There were no witnesses, no suspects, and no clear motive for the shootings. But as more shootings occurred and more evidence was collected, a pattern began to emerge. The police realized that the shootings were the work of a skilled marksman who was using a high-powered rifle to shoot his victims from a distance. They also discovered that the killer or killers were using a white van as their getaway vehicle. Despite the lack of solid leads, the police remained determined to catch the culprits. They combed through surveillance footage, interviewed hundreds of witnesses, and pursued thousands of tips from the public. The D.C. sniper case quickly became one of the most high-profile criminal investigations in American history. With a shooter on the loose and a seemingly random pattern of killings, law enforcement officials faced immense pressure to solve the case and bring the perpetrators to justice. As the investigation unfolded, a trail of clues began to emerge. Witnesses reported seeing a white box truck at the scene of one of the shootings, and surveillance footage captured an image of a vehicle believed to be connected to the crime. Ballistic evidence also linked the shootings to a single weapon. Police began searching for the vehicle and eventually found a white Chevrolet Caprice with New Jersey license plates, parked at a rest stop in Maryland. Inside the car, they found a gun, ammunition, and other evidence linking the vehicle to the shootings. But the investigation didn't stop there. Detectives combed through thousands of tips and leads, searching for any additional information that could help them identify the suspects. They also turned to forensic evidence, analyzing DNA samples and fingerprints to try to link the shooters to the crime. As the investigation continued, the pressure to solve the case only grew. Schools were closed, public events were canceled, and residents of the Washington, D.C. area were on high alert. But despite the intensity of the manhunt, the shooters remained at large, and the community was left in fear. The D.C. snipers' reign of terror came to a halt with the arrest of John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo. After weeks of intense investigation and the gathering of evidence, law enforcement officials were able to track down the suspects to a rest area in Maryland. Both men were taken into custody, and as the investigation continued, shocking details began to emerge. Muhammad was revealed to be the mastermind behind the attacks, using Malvo as his accomplice and protege. The pair had been on a cross-country killing spree, leaving a trail of death and destruction in their wake. During interrogation, both men confessed to their crimes, revealing the twisted motivations behind their actions. Muhammad, a Gulf War veteran, claimed that the shootings were part of a larger plan to incite a race war in America. Malvo, who was only 17 at the time, stated that he had been brainwashed and manipulated by Muhammad. The trial of the D.C. snipers was one of the most high-profile and contentious in U.S. history. Both men were charged with multiple counts of murder, terrorism, and weapons offenses. The prosecution sought the death penalty for Muhammad, while Malvo was given a life sentence without the possibility of parole. In the end, justice was served for the victims of the D.C. sniper attacks, but the legacy of the shootings continues to reverberate throughout American society. The case raised important questions about mental illness, gun control, and the role of the media in reporting on violent crimes. As we reflect on the events of the D.C. sniper attacks and their aftermath, it's important to remember the innocent lives that were lost and the communities that were forever changed. We must also continue to work towards a safer and more just society where violence and hatred have no place. The D.C. sniper attacks sent shockwaves through the Washington, D.C. area and the rest of the country. The senseless violence and seemingly random nature of the shootings left many terrified and uncertain of what might happen next. In the aftermath of the attacks, the region came together to mourn the victims and support their families. Communities held vigils and memorials, while law enforcement continued to work to bring those responsible to justice. The trial of John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo would become a media sensation, with the nation watching as the gruesome details of their crimes were laid bare in court. And when the verdicts were handed down, many breathed a sigh of relief knowing that these dangerous individuals would never be able to harm anyone again. But the impact of the D.C. sniper attacks went beyond just the immediate aftermath. The fear and uncertainty that they caused left a lasting mark on the region, and changed the way that many people viewed the world around them. Some used the tragedy as an opportunity to come together and support each other, while others were left with lingering fear and anxiety. And as time has passed, the memory of the attacks has remained, serving as a reminder of the darkness that can exist in our world. But through it all, the resilience of the communities impacted by the D.C. sniper attacks has shown through. They refused to let fear control them, and instead came together to support one another and work towards a better future. The D.C. sniper attacks may have been a dark chapter in our nation's history, but they also showed us the strength and resilience of the human spirit. The D.C. sniper attacks left an indelible mark on the American psyche, and their impact can still be felt to this day. The fear and uncertainty that gripped the Washington, D.C. area during the 3-week shooting spree left a lasting impression on the city and its residents. But the legacy of the D.C. snipers goes far beyond just the immediate aftermath of the attacks. In the years since the shootings, there has been much debate and discussion about the motives of the killers and the factors that may have contributed to their actions. Some have pointed to their troubled childhoods and difficult upbringings, while others have suggested that they were motivated by extremist ideologies or a desire for notoriety. The case has also raised important questions about gun control laws and the accessibility of firearms in the United States. The use of a high-powered rifle in the attacks brought renewed attention to the issue of gun violence, and sparked a national conversation about how best to regulate firearms. Perhaps most significantly, the D.C. sniper attacks have had a profound impact on law enforcement and emergency response protocols. The coordinated nature of the attacks and the difficulty in identifying the perpetrators highlighted the need for better communication and coordination between different law enforcement agencies. Today, the D.C. sniper attacks are remembered as a tragic and senseless act of violence that shook the nation to its core. But their legacy lives on in the important conversations and changes that they have inspired, and in the ongoing efforts to prevent similar tragedies from happening in the future. The D.C. snipers case was a shocking and terrifying event that took place in the United States. The randomness of the shootings and the fact that the snipers were hidden made it difficult for law enforcement officials to apprehend them. However, through meticulous investigation and the tireless efforts of law enforcement agencies, the snipers were eventually caught and brought to justice. The impact of the D.C. snipers case was felt not just in the United States but across the world. It served as a stark reminder of the potential for violence and terror that exists in our society, and it highlighted the need for vigilance and preparedness. The legacy of this case is one of tragedy and loss, but also of resilience and determination in the face of adversity. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the investigation of the D.C. snipers. It's been a harrowing experience to explore the motivations and actions of these two individuals, and to see the devastation they caused to so many lives. I hope this video has shed some light on the investigation and the tireless work of law enforcement officials to bring the perpetrators to justice. If you found this video informative, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more content like this. I would love to hear your thoughts on the D.C. snipers case. How did it impact you and your community? Do you think justice was served? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.